Welcome back to another episode of Motivation Mondays. Pew, 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 pew. I hope that you had a good week. I hope that you had a wonderful weekend. And I hope that you woke up refreshed and rejuvenated, prepared to face the week ahead. I hope that you have had time to set your intentions for the week, be it, yesterday as you sort of wind down and prepare for the week ahead, or this morning, as you wake up bright eyed, bushy tailed, fresh with ideas and fresh with motivation. Either way, I hope you head into this week with a clear vision of what you'd like to achieve, um, and the necessary tools, skills, resources to achieve said goal. As stated last week, this week's topic is on forgiveness. And, yeah, life has been unfolding in such a way that it has really made me consider and think about forgiveness and what it looks like and what it feels like to have truly forgiven someone, you know? And yeah, without being too cryptic and without taking too long, because I'd like this to be a brief snippet, I think the realization that I have come to is that I don't have to say everything that I think on the topic all in one go, that I can speak what's on my heart and what's like pressing in the moment. But much like the, Life as a Thickens series, that I'm well within my rights to revisit a topic and to expand on something as time goes on. To even share that maybe my perspective on that particular topic has changed, So yeah, I think that might help me stay brief in the sense that I don't have to cover all sides. I'm not, making an argument. I'm not submitting an essay. Um, it is just how I feel and what I think about a particular topic at a particular time. And right now, where my life is at, many things are happening, many things are happening. And I'd like to talk about it. So if you are interested in listening, let's get into it. Alrighty, so on the topic of forgiveness, the thing that has really brought this up for me is the fact that, number one, an old friend that I had, cut contact with decided to reach out. I started seeing someone, and in my attempt of, like, navigating romantic spaces in a different way, you know what I mean? Trying to not repeat old mistakes and trying to just move forward in a more healthy way. You get what I mean? And also just me thinking about like past friendships and how they've ended and stuff like that. I really had to sort of think about what what does forgiveness look like to me? What does it feel like? And what exactly is that process? Because I don't think that I've ever been someone to try and actively work towards reaching a point of forgiveness when it comes to, being upset with someone. That it's either we're just getting over it or, I'm getting over you. But there's no middle ground here. Um, and I don't know, maybe maybe the terminology is wrong, that in me getting over it, that is me forgiving. I don't know, right? I really don't know. But I find that, I I don't know. I kind of came to the realization that I sit in anger and frustration for a very long time. And I want to find a way to sort of just process through that and like let go of that anger. Because you might find that there are other times where I can say that I've like let go and I've moved on and whatever, whatever. But if you mention that person, you know, again, or if I happen to come across, their profile while I'm scrolling or something, that, that anger and that frustration, like it bubbles up again, you know, every single time the thought of them comes up, that anger comes along with it, that frustration, whatever. Um, and that's obviously not healthy, right? Um, yeah. But then also, because I've started, because I started seeing someone, and, when you enter into a relationship or every relationship, it's not going to be perfect, 100% of the time, and it's all just sunshine and rainbows and looking longingly into each other's eyes and all of that stuff. People are going to make mistakes, people are going to fuck up. And for me, the question then became like, how much forgiving needs to happen here? And I guess, that's a question I'm asking because in general, I struggle with forgiveness. But then also, you kind of worry, right, about, you know, letting things slide too much. Like, when when is enough? You know what I mean? When have you forgiven enough now? What's the quota? What's the quota? And I guess, I will bring context to all of this because I know it sounds very abstract at the moment, but I'll give you maybe three examples. Um, I'm trying to keep these brief, but I'll give you three examples of where, you know, I've either contradicted myself when it comes to, my thoughts on forgiveness, or where forgiveness has and hasn't served me, right? So, example number one, an old friend of mine, who I love very much, but we are no longer friends because, uh, yeah, we're no longer friends because we met when we were obviously very young, and we were friends for 9 years before I decided to end things. 9, 10 years. And, you know, I had ended things before, but, he had apologized and, said that he saw the error of his ways and he'd do better and so on and so forth. And he was okay maybe for like a week or two, but then went back to his old ways. And it took me a while to kind of realize that we had fallen back into old habits. And eventually, I decided for my own peace of mind and my own sanity that it would be best if, I left. Um, yeah. And I think it was a very difficult decision. I cried, I cried, I cried. And even in me deciding to sort of end things, I had hoped that, maybe that would be the wake up call that they needed, that they would, come back. But he dug his heels in, and so did I. And, eventually years passed, and I just never spoke to them again, you know? And I think it's thanks to therapy and all the work, the self work that I've been doing, that I had been able to sort of look back on the friendship, um, and actually work through my feelings about the friendship, and clearly see my contribution to the dynamic of the friendship. I'd always been aware that I too was, a problem, in the sense that I was enabling a lot of, his bad behavior. and I didn't have clear boundaries, you know, and that I was overextending myself in many ways. Um, that like this fear of losing the friendship made me um, work against my own best interests, and that a lot of my frustrations and a lot of my resentment towards him also had to do with myself, in the sense that, you know, I can't be mad at someone for taking advantage of something that I offered. Do you get what I mean? When I wasn't forced to offer said things in the first place, you know? So they took advantage of an opportunity, and now I'm mad at them for using the opportunity that I gave them, you know? Because I offered a hand and they took an arm when they, you know, I shouldn't have been putting my hand in that hole in the first place, you know? But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So I think as time went on, like I really, really missed my friend, and you know, these feelings would bubble up, and you know, I'd want to reach out, but I knew it was for the best that I didn't, you know. Um, yeah, and I got to like work through that and forgive myself. To really just sort of like write down, like, listen, this is what you did, this is why you did it, and you know better now. So I'm expecting you to do better, but I forgive you for everything that you did when you were just trying to hold on to your friendship. You were just trying to hold on to someone you cared about, and, you know, because of your own past traumas and, you know, the way that you were raised, you were made to believe, you know, that love and care was conditional. So you had to work for, you know, you had to work for the friendship, you had to work to be cared for and to be cared about. And that's not true, you know. So you're working off of bad information, which is why you're in this predicament. But you have better information now, so let's do better. And I think, had I not tried to forgive myself, I think, you know, I wouldn't be able to sort of let go of the friendship. Um, I would still sort of be pining after the friendship, even though now that I've, you know, done the work to sort of, you know, look at it from a different perspective, I find that it was never a healthy relationship from the start, actually. It was never truly healthy. Um, so it was doomed to fail. It was doomed to fail. The only way the friendship would have succeeded is if I continued to betray myself, you know, like into perpetuity. That the relationship was predicated on me overextending myself and just, you know, making myself everybody's doormat. Um, and that, you know, that's not how I want to live. That's not how I want to live at all. So, going through the process of forgiving myself for putting myself in that position, I think that helped me a lot. And over time, I didn't wish for the friendship anymore. I didn't think about them anymore. I was truly just free of that, you know, relationship. However, I wasn't aware of the fact that I was free of it. Like, you know, you do this work, and like also because I'm really bad at journaling and stuff. So I struggle to keep track of what's going on in my head, you know? Like, yes, I'm back to journaling again. Hopefully, you know, hopefully this time it'll stick. Um, but yeah, you know, you kind of just you're just here in life, and all these things are coming at you from 500 directions, and you have to deal with this, and this is coming up and that is coming up. So eventually, you know, the friendship, now that I'd sort of like dealt with it, it was kind of just put in a box and stored away. Um, and I moved on and tackled other issues, right? But recently, that friend reached out. He reached out, and you know, he just wanted to say that he had gotten his life together, that he apologized for how he treated me in the friendship, um, and just wanted to check on how I was doing. And yeah, I saw the message and I was like surprised. And I don't know how I was expecting to feel, because back when I was in the throes of like, the end of the friendship being very raw and, fresh, I'd always wondered, when I go back home and if I bumped into him in the mall or something, what would I say? How would I feel? What would I do? And I'd have all these little scenarios in my mind where I'm just play it cool, just play it cool, you know what I mean? And or like if you see him before he sees you, then like act like you didn't see him, and like make sure you don't make eye contact and just keep it pushing. And hopefully, you'll be with like a bunch of like really cool friends, you know what I mean? And like you just look like a badass in the shop, and like you're laughing and just ha 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 ha, oh my gosh, you friend, you're hilarious. you know and you're kind of just like, making this little like fantasy of like, okay, cool, cool, cool. But like, what if, we are, let's say, in Checkers, and we're walking down the same aisle and you can't really avoid each other. Then what do? You're just like, hey, keep it cool, keep it breezy, keep it light, and then keep it pushing. Don't act like you're trying to make a long conversation. You're not trying to rekindle anything, you know? And again, you must have somebody with you, somebody who looks cooler than them, someone that you can like demonstrate, the depth of your connection with them, so that he knows that he hasn't left you friendless, that he wasn't your only friend, he wasn't your only option. um yeah, yeah. Honestly, yeah, that's what I thought. But, time went on and I got over it and I moved on, and I never even thought about, like, okay, now that I have healed and now that I have been forgiving myself and, moving on with my life, what now? Like, if I interacted with him now, would I still feel the need to sort of, you know, show that, like, I'm fine without you, I'm okay, you know? Or, would I just calmly interact with him like I would any other person and move on with my life, that it wouldn't affect me so much? It wouldn't bring up those emotions again, And there's no way of really knowing for sure until you're put in that situation. And I was pleasantly surprised by the fact that when I saw his name pop up in my DMs, I those emotions didn't pop up. They didn't bubble to the surface like everything, like it had all just happened yesterday. Because sometimes that happens with me, and I don't know if that happens with you, but with me, like, no matter how much time has passed, like, you'll say the person's name, and that inciting incident, the feelings and everything will come to my mind almost immediately, and I'm pissed all over again. You know what I mean? um but yeah, I was pleasantly surprised that that didn't happen this time, that I just, we had a normal conversation, and I genuinely wanted him to be happy. Like, he said that he had worked on his stuff, that he's healed from everything that he was going through at the time as well. And I just expressed, like, wow, I'm really happy for you, and you deserve to be happy, and I wish you all the best in your future endeavors. And I genuinely meant that, you know? Um, and I was surprised, sort of looking back at myself, like, really, Lebu? You don't feel anything? You've really forgiven and let go? Wow! Growth! Pew, 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 pew. um, and there are definitely other people that I'd like to get to that point. I'd like to get to that point with other people, because there are other people who have upset me and who have hurt me, um, who I know for a fact, if I were to see them in the streets, I would still be just as mad as, the first time, that everything happened. Um, and I want to work on letting go of those people as well, because I now realized how refreshing it is to not have to walk around with all this baggage. I didn't even realize that I had let go of the baggage of this friendship, but now that I'm aware, that I had put it down, it is quite refreshing. It's nice to know that I don't have to be anxious, walking around in the mall or going around places that, like, what if I bump into this person? Or I don't have to get upset every time I bump into their profile, because they're living their best life. And all this anger and resentment is only hurting me, you know. They've moved on with their lives. And whether they carry a certain amount of guilt about what they've done or not is none of my business, because that doesn't change the fact that I'm still sitting here carrying the burden of this frustration when I don't have to. I can genuinely let this go and enjoy the peace of mind that comes with the fact that I've forgiven myself, I've forgiven them, and I can truly move on. I feel like if I continue to operate in this manner where, you know, just the thought of said person or the mention of their name, like, brings everything back up, then I'm constantly living in the past that I can never allow myself to move forward, right? And just of, be free of all of this, to say, like, okay, cool, you know, that happened. It wasn't nice. Um, and because of that, it has told me about this person's character, and I don't want that person in my life anymore. Instead of being upset at myself for allowing these things to happen, because that's also coming from a false sense of, like, ultimate all knowing control, and that you can't control everything and you can't control other people's actions. But also, it it just it serves no function, right? Because sometimes people do things on purpose, sometimes they do it out of ignorance. Why people do the things they do is none of my business. What I need to focus on is what I'm going to do about the information that I receive as I continue to interact with people. I take in that information, synthesize it, digest it, whatever, and then decide what to do and to move forward, right? And that in this instance, I've already decided to end the friendship, but now I'm holding on to it. I'm not letting go. Even though I've ended the friendship, I'm not letting go of that person and that relationship by continuing to hold on to this hurt, you know? So I definitely need, to find a way to work on forgiving people when they've actively hurt me. I think it was easier to forgive my friend um, because I knew that what he was doing wasn't intentional, right? It wasn't an intentional attack on me. It was just where he was in his life at the time. And this was something that I knew even then, you know? So it was easy for me to understand that, how he was treating me was just a byproduct of, the state that he was in. And that he was basically treating everyone like that, that I was just collateral damage. Um, and my hurt, I guess, came from the fact that I thought that he cared enough about me not to subject me to such things. But obviously, he wasn't in a position to, have complete control over everything. And I understand that. But when it comes to, like, people who I know, you know, specifically had targeted me for whatever reason, right? That they felt insecure about themselves, and thought that by bringing me down, that they, would have a leg up on me, that they would feel better about themselves. Those people, I think, are the people that I'm struggling to forgive, because they went out of their way to come after me, right? Especially, when we were friends and I trusted you, and then you specifically chose to hurt me because you wanted to feel better about yourself. That's something that I'm really struggling to let go of. I've let go of past romantic relationships faster than I've let go of, the hurt of a friend betraying you, you know? And that's something that I definitely want to work on moving forward. But even in, you know, the context of romantic relationships, my question oftentimes does become, how much forgiving is too much forgiving, And like, I feel like it's such, sorry, I feel like it's such a slippery slope, you know? That, like, yes, you are human, right? And you're going to make mistakes, and that you hope that your partner will be forgiving and understanding of you as well. That the things that you do are not intentional, you know what I mean? And that you can learn from your mistakes and move forward. But for me, I think I live in like this fear of, what if I end up becoming too forgiving in the situation, and this person, like, issues just become worse and worse and worse, that maybe, and I was using this example with a friend of mine when we were discussing these sort of things, where I was saying that, like, I was saying that, let's say, for example, your capacity for forgiveness is like an extra small, cotton t-shirt, right? Um, and that's all that you can fit in, right? That this is all you have the capacity to forgive, and that's fine, right? Anyone who comes to you with a gripe that is larger than an extra small, they're out. They don't qualify, and it's overs cadovers, But let's say you meet someone and you really, really like them, and you fall for them low key, and they're saying all the right things and doing all the right things, and it's just, it's all warm and fuzzy and cute. Um, and while you're in the throes of things and just like, all swept up in all the romance, um, basically they tell you, oh, listen, babes, I know you're an extra small, but like, surely if you love me, could you please, try and extend yourself maybe just a little bit, and see if you could like fit, over a small. It's not that much, extra small and small are kind of very similar. So could you like stretch yourself a little bit, um, to fit over a small? And because you care about them, and you start to question yourself, and you're just like, maybe extra small, like having an extra small capacity for forgiveness also, is a little bit unreasonable. That's expecting a certain level of like perfectionism, you know, um, and how realistic is it, that people are going to fit into an extra small? You know what I mean? Like, that's also kind of unfair. So, yeah, let me see what I can do. And you stretch yourself over, and it's uncomfortable at first. Maybe it even hurts a little, but you manage, right? You stretch yourself over the small. Um, and you realize that it's not that much of a stretch anyway. Like, yeah, it was uncomfortable at first, but, you know, the fabric has now settled, and this is your new normal. You now have the capacity, of like a small cotton vest, cotton t-shirt, and that's great, and the relationship is now moving forward now, and everybody's happy, and time goes on, and you've even forgotten that at some point you were an extra small. You're just a small now. You identify as a small, all is well, and your partner loves you for being a small, and it's all just great. And then one day again, they come to you and they say, hey babe, um, like, I love you, right? And you love me, right? So what I'm gonna need you to do is just like, let's just see, can you fit over a medium, you know? And as a small, right, going from small to medium, it isn't that much of a stretch, right? And you love your partner, and what type of person would you be if you did not at least try to accommodate them, right? That to sort of quote unquote fat shame them and force them into being a small, that shows that you're unreasonable and inconsiderate, and you're expecting perfectionism from everyone, and you will be for alone forever. You'll be forever alone. You're dooming yourself to a life of being a spinster, if you don't have an expanded capacity for forgiveness, because here you are with someone who loves you, someone who you love, and all they're asking is for you to just like size up like once from a small to medium. Like, come on. And every relationship has sacrifices, and maybe the discomfort of you stretching yourself over a medium, that is the sacrifice that you'll make, and that's your contribution to this relationship, and that's fine. um so now you squeeze yourself over a medium, and you feel a few stitches pop, but otherwise, you know it's fine. It's painful, it's uncomfortable, it hurts. um but that's the work. That's the work of being in a relationship, that it isn't always going to be sunshine and rainbows. So you just have to keep pushing through these tough times, and you see how grateful your partner is, and you see how much they sort of shower you with love, um, and to kind of help you ease the pain of this new adjustment. They're really showing their gratitude, and for you, it's now, it's all worth it. It's all worth it now. um and that just keeps happening, right? From medium to large, from large to extra large, from extra large to double XL to triple XL, and you keep stretching, and seams keep popping, and before you know it, you're just a tattered rag filled with holes, and misshapen. You don't even look like a t-shirt anymore. You just look like, just a rag, basically. And you can't even, cover anyone or cover anything, really. You don't even look like anything that serves a function, aside from maybe, random rag that people use to maybe dust above the curtains and, the windowsills and stuff like that, that we can maybe find a way to repurpose this material. But it would be a far stretch to say that you're a t-shirt or anything that could like clothe someone, you know um and the thing is, you don't even remember that you were an extra small. Like, you've forgotten completely that you stretched yourself so much, that it happened so gradually, so slowly, that you didn't realize how far you have, come from where you originally were, right? Um, and that it was all in the name of love, and you didn't know that you were tearing yourself apart in the name of, love. And I'm not saying that forgiveness is this like dramatic sort of, self-sacrificial thing, that you do need to have boundaries, and you do need to have non-negotiables, um, and you do need to decide like what you're willing to take and what you're not willing to take, right? But I think that is the messiness of it all, the slippery slope of forgiveness, where if you forgive it the first time, should you forgive it the second time, or should you give everybody, a first time, right? That you can offend me the first time, I'll forgive you, and no more, no second chances, right? But then what if it's a different offense each time? So the first time, they forget an important thing, or they break a promise to you. The second time, you know, um, they spill one of your secrets or whatever. Like, each time it's a different offense, and therefore you just keep forgiving it because, well, he's never done that to me before, and hopefully he'll never do it again, because the last one that he did, he hasn't done that before. Do you get what I mean? It ends up going all over the place. Like, what the hell? What the hell? And I do understand that there is a healthy balance, right? That you decide for yourself what you can forgive, what you can overlook, what you can move forward from. And I think it just takes being honest with yourself. I think it honestly and truly just takes being honest with yourself, honest with the fact that you have the capacity of an extra small right now, right? And it does mean that maybe at that time you'll be quick to end relationships and you'll be quick to sort of like cut people off because you've reached your capacity and that's it, right? But I think that you shouldn't be stretching your capacity for forgiveness for someone else, that it should be your internal work, right? That as you work on yourself and as you increase your capacity to forgive and love yourself, that then maybe you will have more empathy and more understanding and more like willingness to forgive others, right? To move past hurt. But if you're like, overextending yourself for someone else, choosing to be blinded by love or friendship or whatever, choosing to be blinded by those things, and overextending yourself in the process, that then eventually you're going to resent that person, right? And you're eventually going to look back on your life and look back at yourself and, you know, not even recognize the person that you have become, right? And you don't want to find yourself in that position. That yes, romantic relationships and all relationships have the capacity to grow you, to sort of show you different sides of yourself and really just show you new experiences and allow you to see the world through a different perspective. But it should all be at your own pace, all at the pace that you can handle, right? You don't want to be breaking yourself for any new experiences or anyone. That these things will come when you are ready and you don't have to force it because the other person wants to take you there. You will get there eventually at your own time and at the right time for you, you know? So I think that, like, even sort of maybe when you sit and, gossip with your friends and you're talking about someone who took their boyfriend back after the boyfriend cheated on them like 500 times, and you're just like, oh my gosh, that could never be me. That could never be me. Like, sure, maybe that could never be you, right? Because you don't have that capacity. You don't understand how someone can come back from such things, but it doesn't mean that it's impossible to come back from such things. If you honestly and truly think that, like, listen, life happens, it is what it is, and that you think that you can move forward from infidelity or any other sort of betrayal, right? Then that's you, right? That's the work that you've done, and that's, the knowledge that you have of yourself, that you think that you can handle that, and that for you, maybe cheating isn't the biggest betrayal in a relationship, that for you, how you've metabolized cheating or how you understand cheating is like, listen, we all make mistakes, we're all human, and sometimes we get tempted and we trip and we fall, and that it has nothing to do with me, right? To expect my partner to do everything in the name of me is unreasonable. That person in that moment was scratching an itch, and that's fine because they're still committed to me. I still see the things that I need to see in this relationship to feel, assured in the fact that they are committed to me, that they will be there for me in the ways that I need them to be there for me. I don't need my partner to have his eyes locked on me all the time. I don't need that to feel secure in a relationship. For me, I need something else. But you need to have that self-awareness. It needs to be coming from you, right? But if you're going to find yourself in a situation where your partner has cheated on you, it has hurt you deeply, right? And your partner is now love bombing you or doing whatever, really trying to like push you to get over this thing because they want to get back together, and they're apologizing and they're doing everything and they're groveling and they're whatever, and you're really torn and you're struggling with this thing because before this you had clearly stated like, no, cheating is a no-go, But now you find yourself in that predicament and you don't know what to do because this is the love of your life. You thought you'd be spending the rest of your life with this person, and now they've gone and fucked everything up. What are you gonna do? What are you going to do? Do you stand by your principles, right? Do you stand by what you had said before and said, no, cheetah's got to go? Or now, do you consider expanding your idea of forgiveness? Do you now try and convince yourself that, well, at least he's come back to me, at least he's chosen me, and all I've really wanted was to be chosen, so I guess I got what I wanted? And you might choose to forgive in the moment, right? You might want to think that, like, you know what, I think if I just work on myself, or if I just work on it, that, like, maybe I can forgive this person. So you choose to take them back because it'll be a process to forgive them. It's not going to happen overnight, but eventually it will happen, right? And that's what you hope. And over time you realize that, like, you really can't get over this thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's disturbing your spirit. You really, really can't get over it. Then that's fine. You communicate and you say, listen, I thought I could get over this, but I can't. I really can't. You upset me, you hurt me deeply, and I don't want to have to be living with this pain all the time. This is not something that I can just let go of. And I don't want to be living like this. I don't want to live with this, and I don't have to. So I'm leaving, you know. And I think that that's better. That at least you can try to forgive and see if that works. But if it doesn't, don't force it. Don't force it, because I think sometimes the inability to let go of something is maybe your mind's way of protecting you, right? To say, like, I need you not to go back there. And if I allow you to forgive and forget and to move on, that you're going to find yourself back there. This uncomfortable feeling, this upsetness, this thing, it's my reminder to tell you that it's not safe here. You need to leave. That maybe you can forgive them once you've exited the relationship and you have enough distance to be able to just see them without mixing yourself into it, right? And just see them for who they are and say that, like, listen, they're a flawed individual and they fumbled the bag. Like, I'm an amazing human being, and they clearly, were not ready to deal with a bad bitch such as myself. So they sabotaged the relationship, they sabotaged everything. Because they thought they couldn't deserve me. Maybe that's the reasoning. Or maybe there isn't a good reason and they're just a piece of shit and I only, saw the real them for the first time now. Either way, I'm out of that situation and there's no risk of that person ever hurting me again. And now, I have the freedom to move on and to forgive because there's no risk attached to it anymore, you know? And maybe that's the only way that you can forgive once you've removed yourself from the situation. And that still counts. That still counts as forgiveness, you know? So, yeah, a lot of things have been happening. I've been even noticing with my colleagues at work where, you know, something hectic will happen. They'll confront each other and, a mini fight will break out, but they recover from that so quickly. They said everything that they needed to say. They got it off their chest, and then they just move on. They move on, and it's done. And I don't know whether they actually forgive each other or if they just keep it in a file in the back of their heads or whatever. But there's no tension, right? They at least let go of it enough for it not to present itself, in the day-to-day interactions. Um, but yeah, and I think there's a lot to be learned there, because I find that even when there has been a confrontation, even a benign confrontation where we've now found a resolution, that it takes me a long time to come back down from that, like, tension, that the anger and the tension and the anxiety still sort of lives in my body long after the issue, has sort of resolved itself. And I sort of, now that I know that there is a point of contention here, there's this anxiety that then comes up that, like, what if it comes up again? You know? Sorry. That, like, what if it comes up again? You know? What if, And that's also not healthy. That also, leads to one not forgiving and not moving on, because you're constantly worried that this thing will happen again. And if you're worried that it'll happen again, then that is also a sign that you haven't moved on from it, um, or that there's certain boundaries that you need to set in place to ensure that even if it does happen again, that, it doesn't affect you as much. You know what I mean? But yeah, oh, I've rambled on for way too long now. And yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on forgiveness. I'd love to hear, how you work through upset, if you are in a romantic relationship or even with your friendships. How do you, resolve issues? How do you consolidate, you know, your sort of grievances with each other? Um, how do you bring up these things? What is your process for forgiveness? And when, what is a good indicator for you, like, to let go? You know, when is it a good time to let go? When is it a good time to stay? What are the certain sort of factors that you consider when making that decision? And yeah, does forgiveness come easy for you, or is it something that you struggle with as well? I guess those are my questions for this week. No, no homeworks. I guess the only homework would be to reflect, I guess, and to, if you'd never really thought about your relationship with forgiveness, that maybe your homework is to look at how, you know, maybe being too forgiving, or the lack thereof, has affected your relationships with the people around you and also with yourself. Anyway, I will see you next week. Please be kind to yourself. And I am not sure what next week's topic is going to be. So we will find out together next week. Until then, please like, share, and subscribe, and comment, do all those things, interact with the social media, and I will see you next time. Bye.